Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Hi, I'm Scott.
Hi, I'm Mark.
And this is Church is Lame, the podcast where we talk about the stupid things churches do that break the entire body.
So, Scott, tell me, what stupid prize have I won?
Oh my gosh. So this week is the speed round. There weren't a lot of big headlines, but there were lots of interesting headlines. So
Okay.
I thought like we kind of chop them down and mow through them here in like the 30 minutes ish that we allot to this little thing that we call a podcast.
All right, I'm ready to mow.
Okay, so Texas school district is removing all challenged books. It's like challenged books. Like, did they have a hard time making it to the finish line? What does that mean? Challenged books, like physically challenged, verbally challenged, emotionally challenged. What does that mean? Okay, but
just some notes for the people that wrote this headline. Be better.
Although you have to appreciate the opportunity for the joke, right? It's like thanks for laying that up, you know. So that was actually kind of nice. I kind of appreciated that. Okay, but anyway, so Texas, everything's bigger in Texas, right? And so the way they make mistakes is bigger in Texas.
All right.
So there's a school district in Texas that, what is it? The Keller Independent School District. They're following the trend right now, jumping on the bandwagon of using this opportunity in time to get rid of all the books that don't epitomize their worldview. Okay.
All right. Woke culture is coming for your children, folks.
Exactly. And so, play stupid games, play stupid prizes. What happens is if you make enough people mad, somebody's going to put books on that list that offend them. And guess what? Our Holy Bible, our sacred text of texts, got put on that list of books to be banned, right?
Really? I mean, it's not like it contains things like, murder, drug use, incest, hallucinations, witchcraft, any of that nonsense.
And that's just the stuff we could talk about.
Yeah.
Like instructions for making sweet love,
Yeah, it's like I will never look at deer the same way.
Exactly.
After I've read Song of Solomon.
Exactly. But so to me, this is like the least surprising headline ever. Of course, a stupid decision to ban like that incredibly horrible book like The Diary of Anne Frank. Of course that was never going to have any sort of blowback, Yeah,
it's so offensive how that family really tried to help Jews out in the Nazi times.
Yep. So yeah, like you try to punish the people that you don't like. Guess what? The people that you don't like are going to try to punish you. It's the way the world works, So yeah, just kind of stupid things that have stupid results, So yeah. All right. So moving right along. Like I said, this is kind of the speed round today.
Okay.
Okay. This one we're going to spend a little bit more time on because it's truly fascinating. Kind of like people get away with this in church, really. So pastor apologizes for calling congregation broke. And so I found this one on the ChristianPost.com. And there's
like broke how?
Like broke, like you guys are too cheap to fund. What he asked for was a Movado watch, apparently, right? And so there's a word in the church world. Like, let's say you go speak as a guest speaker at somebody else's church. Usually, the church that's asking you to come, they will automatically say, "Look, we'd love for you to come. We're going to pay for your travel. We're going to put you up in a hotel, pay for your food, right? And then we're going to take an honorarium, and the honorarium is a separate offering from the church and the proceeds of that offering go straight to you to honor you and thank you for coming to our church and speaking, right?"
Mm-hmm.
And so this dude, Missouri Pastor Carlton Funderburke, I love that name.
Cool name.
I'm going to get my name changed to Scott Funderburke because that's the best.
You got to do something. I changed my name, so go ahead, change yours. It's fun.
So there's a video on Facebook, and he takes his church downtown and just busts them up.
That's how I know you still poor, broke, busted, and disgusted because of how you've been honoring me. I'm not worth your McDonald's money. Come on. I'm not worth your Red Lobster money. I ain't worth your St. John knit. Y'all can't afford it no how. I ain't worth y'all Louis Vuitton. I ain't worth your Prada. I'm not worth your Gucci. Mother, oh, I'm saying this, and I promise you, Deacon Ian, it's not with respect of want. I'm saying it because I want you to understand just what God is saying. And found out that Movado, you can buy a Movado watch in Sam's.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can.
And y'all know I asked for one last year. Here it is the whole way in August. I still ain't got it. Y'all ain't saying nothing. Let me kick down the door and talk to my cheap sons and daughters. I don't want to hear no more excuses about what y'all can't afford. You can't afford it because you don't see the value here. Y'all hear from y'all pastor and father, I'm over y'all. I'm over your cheap expressions.
For not giving the gift that he wanted, for not giving the money. And he goes on the same, the same tirade that everybody goes on, but he's like totally unapologetic about it. Like, oh, you can afford your Gucci, but you can't, you can't give to the church. You can afford your Mercedes, but you can't give to the church. But really, it's not give to the church. It's about giving him the actual watch that he wanted. So just to kind of imagine that silliness in your mind, and the video is all of that and then some.
Yeah, like that whole thing we had like a couple of episodes ago where I was saying like, when that whole thing when you point the finger at someone else, you got, 3 pointing back at you.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Right.
Like this right here.
Right. So I feel a little bit bad because this is a part of this has to do with culture, right? So this is a black church that very much has that that small black church culture to it, right? People standing up and sitting down and yelling and fainting and being very expressive. And when every time the pastor says something, the organist hits a chord, wow. And, so it's very much that stereotypical black church culture, right? So in that context, I don't think what he did was so like incredibly like horrific, right? It's only when you kind of take it out of that circle of trust, right? Like he forgot that there's a camera that's streaming this thing to the whole world. Right. And it's not just his local church that's watching this. It's everybody who's looking for a reason to kind of go, yeah, him, I always knew he was a bad seed kind of thing. Right. So here's a guy who didn't really understand a context that he actually helped to create, but he's got a staff and, part of that staff is like a multimedia staff. And, so, it's a beautiful facility, a beautiful stage. And, at some point they made a decision. Let's put up some microphones and cameras and let's stream this stuff to the world. Well, you got to be careful because you don't know who's watching. And not everybody understands what's happening in this video. And that, like, even though it seems like you're browbeating your church, it's not really as harsh as it kind of comes off,
I mean, I don't think I could ever say harsh to this because it's just like this whole... it's the absurdity of it. Like it almost sounds like a thing that we just kind of made up, like that pastor that got robbed of $1 million of jewelry on camera, which it's like that whole kind of culture of prosperity gospel type stuff where it's like, I'm sorry, you're a pastor, you want a Movado watch because you don't know, you can't tell time unless it's a Movado watch or something. Like it's absurd, and like as a teacher, like Paul in scripture, like he talks about, I can't remember where, so I apologize for that. But, he talks about, like share all good things with the teacher, like, and saying like, is the laborer worth his work? So it's like, you should really, make sure that your pastors can eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And are taken care of. But it's like, you're complaining about people just not giving you what you want, not what you need. It's like, you've missed an important biblical lesson there.
Yeah. And I think like you and I have talked about this once or twice, but most churches don't just give the pastor a salary. Like you get professional expenses. Lots of pastors have to travel to do like hospital visits, right? So you get professional expenses for gasoline and mileage. And most pastors will get some sort of, expenses for their outfits and things like that. So part of this to me feels like, dude, just buy the watch and make it part of that professional expenses budget, Like, why are you going to town on your church about that? But either way, okay, I'm done with this. Yeah. So anyway, I would just love for Sam for you to put in a couple seconds just because it's fun. It's a fun video. Okay.
Right on.
So now from the absurd to the kind of day late, dollar short category of stupid games, stupid prizes. Pastor calls for end to gun violence after second son is killed.
Second son. That sucks.
Okay, so let me say this up front. I'm a man of peace. I think pastors should be people of peace as well. So there's nothing wrong for anybody ever at any time calling for an end of gun violence. The problem here is that when you wait to call for the end of gun violence until 2 of your sons have been killed, it seems very opportunist, and it seems like you really haven't had your hand on the pulse of what's going on in your community until it affected you personally.
I mean, oh gosh, because I wanna say that, like when it comes to making peace, that should be a principal thing that a pastor is doing in their community.
Yeah.
It says in the Beatitudes, blessed are the peacemakers. That's in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapters 5-7.
Yeah.
So it says, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And making peace in your neighborhood is an important thing. And if you can't see the need to make peace and you lose one child due to gun violence, that's super unfortunate and is awful. To lose a second one of that gun violence is awful, but it's like there's this idea that you couldn't speak out against it before you lost the first son is also unfortunate.
Yeah.
And that you didn't speak out against it until you lost your second son to gun violence is madness.
Right. The other part of this that is kind of very predictable is that people want to try to solve very complex problems with simple solutions, as if getting up on a microphone and calling for an end of gun violence somehow magically ends the kind of poverty that leads young black men to gangs, right? And not that I'm an expert on this, because I'm not, right? But if you want to solve gun violence, you've got to solve things like the lack of upward mobility for minorities. You've got to solve things like gang culture and the prevalence of drugs and there's all sorts of things that you need to be willing to take on before you can even get to the conversation about how guns are forcing our young black men to kill one another, and that fight for respect, So, yeah, it's. I think it makes the church kind of look very Pollyanna, right? Kind of I can just say Jesus, and all of a sudden, every problem is solved.
Yeah, but I think we're being insulting to Pollyanna.
Oh, ouch. That's not what I thought you were going to say.
I know. I like to disappoint.
Yeah.
It's just because like Pollyanna had this hope.
Yeah.
There's just this kind of naive hope, right?
Yeah.
That the world's great, everything is fantastic. And it's like we have this in the church. We have that kind of Pollyannish thinking, but it's also combined with all I have to do is pray, and I've done something.
And you've done something. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah.
And again, prayer is great.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong. Prayer should be alongside action, though.
Yeah, exactly right.
So.
Right. Yep. Okay, so moving right along, this is the continuation of our episodes-long mea culpa about Nigeria. Really, we had mistakenly said that we hate it when people talk about persecution, and we had referenced an article about Nigeria where there really is Christian persecution.
Yeah.
And so Christian headlines. Muslim extremists cut off hand of Christian convert. Somebody did something as awful as say the words, Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and they cut off their hands. Brothers, sisters, church in America, shut up about your persecution because Harry Potter is still on the bookshelves. Just shut up. Okay, there is real Christian persecution in this world, and you are not experiencing any of it.
Yeah, and we shouldn't have to be talking about some kid in another country. Or maybe a kid, maybe an adult. I don't know, but we shouldn't be talking about anybody in another country becoming a Christian and then immediately being physically attacked by people in their community because of that fact. And I don't know, it makes me mad that because I complain, it's more than I need to, right, about that persecution complex that a lot of American Christians have.
Yeah.
but it's like this, this is real persecution.
Yeah.
And, I think, Lecrae in one of his songs, even talks about, going to China and seeing, like underground churches.
Yeah.
And that's persecution when like you have to operate your church illegally. Like that's persecution.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I don't like, there's so many things I want to say about this, but let's just leave it there and just say persecution is real. And what you and I often feel like persecution probably isn't. All right. Moving right along. Okay. Here we go. In more keeping you up to date with interesting stories from the past, we have Pastor Tavner Smith. If you remember, we talked about Venue Church, who had this little faux pas. The church went up in the newspaper as saying, "Hey, foreclosure. Would somebody like to buy this interesting piece of real estate? You could make something out of this, like recordings." No, I don't know what it said, but like all sorts of interesting things you do at the church, right?
Turn into a bar and a strip club.
There you go. But the pastor, when being asked about this, says, "No, we're fine. No danger of foreclosure." Well, turns out that, of course, it's in the newspaper. It's in the newspaper for good reason, because it's real and it's true. And nobody has anything to gain by lying about it, except for Pastor Smith, right?
Yeah. It's like, you should never, like, as a pastor, I mean, maybe just as a person, right? Like, we should just never try to save face and just own it.
Yeah.
When you get called out on something, because it just makes it worse when you have to come around like this chucklehead and then like admit that you were full of it.
Right. And, so like, obviously, like, okay, why was the church going to foreclosure? Well, because giving is down, right? Well, why is giving down? Well, because members left. Well, why did members leave? Well, because there was this awful split in the church. Why is there an awful split in the church? Well, it turned out that, having a pastor who is being unfaithful to his wife, as well as other things, tends to cause rifts. And, so.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought that was just like a story that people made up to tell their children, like, Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny.
Yeah. So it's not like this is just kind of a small interest, like a funny story. Like, oh, look at, like, he got caught with this, I don't know, like I was going to say he got caught with his pants down, but he literally did get caught kissing a church employee and having affairs and stuff like that, And so like we said on the last episode where we talked about this is literally an example of how, like, the stupid things churches do, i.e. have an affair, like literally breaks the church. This church, words is hard. This church is literally falling apart, and maybe it should, maybe the best thing for this church is just close the doors and have everybody start over at a healthy church.
I mean, I'd like to think it doesn't take that much, but yeah, perhaps you're right.
Maybe. Sometimes, some like church splits are hard. Church splits are really, really hard. They're hard for the people who left, but sometimes they're even harder for the people who stay, because every day you look at one another knowing full well what happened here, how awful it was, and how you failed to do anything about it. It's super hard. I've been there. I've been on staff at a church that went through a split, and it was just so hard because everybody was just in let's move on mode, and nobody really wanted to deal with the pain and working through it the way they needed to. It was really hard. And I was lucky. Like, I wasn't there for the split. I came on after the split. They hired a new pastor, and they were trying to build up again, but after several months of just seeing their unwillingness to really be real with each other, to be honest with each other, to deal with each other's hearts, like, I was like, okay, yeah, this is not a healthy place for me and my family to be.
Yeah. And it's an unfortunate reality that a lot of churches, I mean, even churches that have not gone through splits or anything like that, are still not safe places to be in that sense.
Yep.
And, I know, like, saying safe space is like a way to, trigger certain people, but it's like, look, if you go to church and you can't talk about, your innermost life, that's bad.
Yep.
Like, you should be able to do that. And I'm not saying that any church really lives up to that.
Yep.
Because quite frankly, a lot of them don't.
Exactly.
But that's the thing I think we need to set our eyes on.
Yeah.
just kind of universally as the church, we need to set our eyes on that and just kind of make that a goal, because, that's the environment that will, like if you would want to worry about congregational growth, that's what's going to cause it.
Yeah.
Is when you're actually really living out that closeness of family as children of God,
Absolutely. All right, let's keep the engine moving here. Let's get the engine moving. Let's keep the wheels moving. Let's keep the wheels moving, or let's keep the bus moving. Yeah, well, I guess engines turn. I guess, right? They've got a crank and they turn. But yeah, okay. So let's keep this bus moving. Okay.
Yeah.
All
whatever.
right.
Internal combustion is happening.
So I've got to say, I'm going to give this writer props for crafting a headline that makes you want to read more. Okay.
Okay.
So this is from ChristianPost.com. Pastor's wife gets life in prison for a role in husband's murder.
Well, that just is fun.
Right. And so, like, on the face of it, it's just like, well, yeah, if you're a church leader, don't go around planning murders, right? That seems to be fairly straightforward, like on how that breaks.
As a rule.
As to the question of how it breaks the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like most onions, this onion has layers, right? So Christy Donnell Evans, like the name Christy wasn't feminine enough. Her parents needed to make sure that we knew that she was a girl by going with Dawn L. Or maybe she's Kryptonian, like Dawn L. I don't know. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Son of Jor-El.
Okay.
I get it.
But anyway, so, her husband there's an attempted murder, and she's part of the plot. Her husband is a Baptist pastor named David Evans, and she claims that in their 30-year marriage that she was forced to have sex with 50 to 100 other men.
So you said Baptist, right? Not like fundamentalist. Else,
right. Yeah. We didn't say Scientology or something, right?
What bad? My brain drained. I was trying to say like fundamentalist Lutheran Church or Church of Latter-day Saints. Yeah, the FLDS, Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Editor needs to work some magic on that stupidity.
Yeah. So, like, once again, like we just talked about poverty and shooting, and this is the same thing, right? The reason why you can go out and find somebody to shoot your husband is because there are men out there who feel so hopeless in their ability to, make a life for themselves that something like this actually seems like, a viable, way to get ahead a little bit. Unbelievable. Like, I'm not even sure what to say about this, right?
No, like this is just jacked on every single level.
Yeah. Once again, accountability. How did nobody know that anything was happening? Like, how do you, okay, so you're married to this man. How do you not tell anybody this is going on? And if you feel trapped, how do you not, and I understand that there's like a Stockholm syndrome thing here where that feeling like you can't escape is very real. But like, did you not listen to what your husband was saying on Sunday morning? That we are children of light, that we are children of truth, that we are children who have faith in a father, like in a heavenly father, the way children have faith in their real mother and father. And to have that kind of faith means being willing to say the secret things out loud,
Yeah, and if somebody's being abused like this in that way, I mean, it's just insanity, right? But, beyond that, like when you just constantly damage somebody and over and over and over again, I mean, I'm sorry, but it's like if true, her accusations about her husband, like I have problems putting her away for life.
That's the thing, right? It's completely impossible to feel bad for her husband if this is true, right? Yeah. Absolutely. And by the way, who are these 50 or 100 people? Like, how does this guy surround himself with 50 people and not a single word of this gets out? Like, what kind of crazy loony bin of a church are we operating in here? Because that statistically speaking, some of those 50 to 100 guys had to be members of the church.
I would have expected most of them to be.
So yeah, this is just like absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Yeah. Well, maybe like you said, it was Baptist, so maybe there's like, something will come out, related to the SBC that we haven't heard yet.
Yeah. And so like we're making light of this a little bit, and obviously none of this is that funny but like there is that aspect of like, if you don't laugh, like you end up putting yourself in a very dark place. Clearly, this story is a great example of what breaks the church, right? A church and a church leadership and a church executive board and whatever else that is broken every which way. The staff has no idea who their pastor is. The executive board have no idea who their friend is. The pastor has no real relationships with anybody in the church. If he did, somebody would know something, right? A dysfunctional marriage, to the point of plotting murder. Like, and of course,
and people don't plot murder because they're feeling, happy about anything. And, to be a pastor's wife and to plot the murder of a pastor, you're either seriously deranged or you're seriously abused. And there should have been somewhere she could have gone.
Right. So if you're somebody in Pontotoc County, Oklahoma, and you're thinking about attending a church, I think you're probably going to change your mind about attending any church after seeing this story in your newspaper, right? And I think you're going to kind of go, you know what? My life is not that bad. I think instead of going to church today, I'll just go visit mom instead.
Probably a better choice.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that's fairly obvious on how that breaks the church. All right, moving on. My last story of the day.
Okay.
And once again, this falls right into the play stupid games, win stupid prizes inbox quite well. This is ChristianPost.com. 25% of U.S. evangelicals say they've spoken in tongues. Survey says. I hate this. I hate this when everybody does it. I hate when people use facts and then don't speak truth. Drives me nuts when people manipulate numbers to say things that shouldn't be said. Right.
So are you suggesting that somebody was using statistics in an untoward way?
I think I am.
That never happens.
That never happens in the church.
No.
But so here's the deal. The church is big. There's lots of people, right? But when you want to make a certain number seem big, you can't poll everybody because that number that you want to seem big becomes really, really small, right? Yeah. So if you polled all Christians and asked if you've spoken in tongues, you would get a very, very, very low percentage, right? And so what they did is they only polled that little slice of the pie that even thinks that speaking in tongues is a real thing, right? And that's how they got 25%. And it drives me nuts because we're making a headline out of something that, one, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about anything. It has no particular form or function in the modern church at all. But B, there's a writer out there somewhere. Who's the writer of this article? Right? There's a writer out here named Ian Giotti. And this is important to him, right? This is important to Ian, speaking in tongues. And so now he uses the power of the press to spit out a number that is meaningless about a topic that has no practical purpose, right? Just drives me nuts that people can use their column inches this way, Yeah,
I think the bigger part for me on this is just that it's it's kind of meant to be like a shocking, oh, look how high this number is.
Yeah.
And it's I've been around many evangelicals in my life, and if I had to put a percentage on how many of them have ever spoken in tongues, a single digit percentage at highest.
Not even I've been in many Pentecostal churches, and so let's say you go to a medium-sized Pentecostal church, 500 people. There may be 2, 3 that speak in tongues, not just speak in tongues, but speak in tongues in the way the Bible would suggest it ought be done, right?
Yeah.
Not only is there somebody speaking in tongues, but there's somebody interpreting, right? Because you go to every Pentecostal church and everybody's going shabba-labba ding-dong, sha-na-na, heebie-jeebies, right? Everybody's doing that, right? Who cares, right? But then things get interesting when somebody actually speaks up and interprets it, right?
Yeah, and I think I think that probably this would have to be looking at the people that are going shamalama ding dang or whatever, and if you think I'm being harsh, just go watch the first Borat movie, and watch the scene where Sacha Baron Cohen starts quote unquote speaking in tongues, and he's faking it the entire time, and not a single one of these people who are filled with the Holy Spirit can tell he's faking.
Right.
I'm not saying that like all speaking in tongues is garbage, but I'm saying that a lot of it is.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think a lot of people are saying like, oh, well, like when I'm just making wild babbling noises, I'm not even sure if they're trying to pray or if they're just trying to feel the spirit or what like role that it serves in worship.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's talking about that. But even that, it's like this number seems vastly too high.
Yeah. It's just interesting because it's one like I said before, it's one of these hills that Christians are willing to die on, right? Like it's important that we talk about speaking in tongues and how important it is for people to speak in tongues to show that they are mature Christians, right? And it's really has nothing to do about maturing in Christ. It actually has everything to do with separating us from them, right?
Well,
there's us that feel good about ourselves, and there's them who are really just kind of like peons, and they're not really they don't get to sit at the grown-ups table yet.
Yeah. So my question though is like, I mean, could it be that like this whatever we call it a need? I mean, maybe that's being too unfair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, words is hard.
Yeah.
Could it be that like this is an attempt to kind of say like, look how the spirit is real? Like they're trying to say like that this is a really common thing. Like they're trying to use this as evidence to say like, you should believe in God because of look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I'm just kind of, spitting out loud here.
Yeah. Like this, it's hard because like if you poll 100 people, you get 100 different opinions. Right. So yeah. I think I would really have a hard time like pinning that down. And even like, like I said, I've gone to Pentecostal churches where I've been a member, and I consider some people who consider this important to be my friends, in the current day. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's a dicey topic, but the end result of it and how it splits us apart instead of bringing us together is the part that I think needs special attention.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, like as like Christians of all sorts, like we should be able to come together and see how, if you're doing something like one of these, quote unquote sign gifts,
Yeah.
That's what they're generally referred to. Right. And if you're doing this and it's bringing glory to God, then great. But if it's not, then you need to stop.
Yeah.
Like that's the biblical rule, and it's just easy.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I got for this week. Like I said, speed round where we kind of hit a lot of things in a short amount of time. Let us know how you feel about this. Initially, we started out just doing one story every week. And we've been doing like 2 or 3. Let me know like how you felt about this speed round, and if you if you preferred kind of going fast and loose, or if you prefer a more disciplined conversation, right? On fewer topics. Please leave us comments on YouTube, because that's where where we can see kind of how the comments add up the easiest, right? But speaking of comments, this week we have a comment from Jean Gerber, who is in South Africa, and you may have watched the video where I talked about somebody who was demanding that we kind of reply to them in long form in the comments section. That's Jean, and Jean is back this week, and his response is, I know how long it takes to find content and to record videos. It's much quicker to have a discussion in the comments section rather than to respond via video. And John, I don't disagree. Like, it is quick to type out. But as we've seen in the conversation that you and I were having back and forth, a lot of intent got lost in there. A lot of the humor got lost in the butthurtedness, right? So a lot of things got lost. And then once again, this is the video format. And so when I asked Mark, let's jump in here and let's do something, we're going to hit the record button, and we're going to put it out on a video thing. So as much as we appreciate what you're trying to do and where you're trying to take this, the way we're going to really put a lot of ourselves into it is through the video format. And that's just kind of how that is.
Yeah. So, film it or ditch it.
Yeah, whichever. Like, I'm okay either way. Like, I'm happy to let this drop and go away. But if you want to continue to have the conversation, like, look into the red light and say cheese. Okay.
Yeah. Or, you know what? Just email us. And if you want to, you can just have a conversation with us, an actual conversation.
Well, he can have a conversation with you. I'm sticking to my guns on this one. Okay. All right. New subscriber. We're always excited about new subscribers. And YouTube makes it possible to actually see who's subscribing. So Paula Slits, hold on. I'm not going to get this right. Too many consonants all in a row. Slitsky Paula Slitsky.
Okay.
Paula, sorry about the name butchering, but as you know, words is hard. And we just appreciate you subscribing and jumping on board this crazy bus for whatever it brings. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we hope that our brain hurt can bring you some amount of joy, comfort, or, maybe just fill you with righteous anger.
Yeah, hey,
whatever you need in the moment.
If it makes you feel anything, that's a job well done.
Yeah. And I mean, we're not as good as Rob Bell is at making people feel, comforted and loved, but we've got our niche.
Yeah. Hey, in the immortal words of that great prophet Toby Keith, we're not as good as we once were, but we're as good once as we ever were.
Yeah, I'm not sure that song's about talking.
Yeah. Hey, we love hearing from you guys as much as we love hearing the sound of our own voices, as narcissistic as we are. So hey, hit those subscribe buttons, hit those like buttons, hit those notification icons. If you're listening to the podcast, give us a review and hit those stars. And if you really need to get a hold of us, but like Mark said, open up your email app and send an email to churcheslamepodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, because we actually read those emails.
We do.
All the ones that we've gotten so far have been all over the place, and I can't really comment on them. But it's nice when people do that, because it definitely gives us an opportunity to interact with you more than just vomiting into a camera.
Yeah.
And then hoping you enjoy it.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, and with that, we love you, and we're just glad to have you with us. Once again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.